Okay, we're all going to begin our program tonight. I want to welcome everyone here tonight, and this is really an important part of my program that I started. I've been trying to get some kind of programs like this going, and I've been happy to get the support of my colleagues. This is the inaugural program of Huntington Small Business Resource and Recovery Center. And basically, just to give you a little bit of a background, this started in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. And what happened during Hurricane Katrina was Huntington was hit worse than any of the towns in Long Island. And small businesses were looking for places to reopen. They lost their power. So what we did as a town is we opened up the libraries, asked them to open up earlier so that they could recharge their computers and they could recharge their cell phones. And we went one step further, and in the room behind us, we opened up an emergency business center. So having done that, we then took a step back and we realized we needed to do something more for the town of Huntington, for the residents and for the small businesses. So we started the Small Business Resource and Recovery Center. And the Small Business Resource and Recovery Center does two things. It first works on helping existing small businesses cut their costs in these difficult economic times and allow them to go forward in a profitable manner. It gives them guidance. We have tools and resources. And the Small Business Center also has business plan modules so that you could try to start your own business. And you have discounted products and services that we have with the banking community and with different vendors in Huntington. So it's really something I'm very proud of, and I'm excited about, and I'm glad everyone's here. I want to welcome you here tonight again. The supervisor is recovering from surgery, and my colleagues, Councilman Cuthbertson, Councilman Cook, and Councilman Berlin have other engagements tonight, or else they would also be with us. This workshop is to help job seekers, and we are going to have a series of workshops, and we thought what would be the most important workshop that we should have. And basically it comes down to people who are out of a job and they need guidance, and you have long-term unemployed. You need some kind of a kickstart so that you can go forward in a positive way and look for that new job. And this program does a few things. It starts out with giving you a task list of things to do, which are actions. So it's kind of like it kickstarts what you need to do. It tells you these certain actions, and to complete these actions, it gives you ideas and resources. And after you go through the ideas and resources, you then see the benefits so that you have a product for yourself to go forward. And one thing, for example, is projecting your professionalism. That's one thing that Karen is going to get into, and she's going to expound upon. And Karen is going to be speaking in a few moments. I'm just going to briefly talk about her. Karen McKenna has 25 years business experience. She's highly recommended and affiliated with the New York State Small Business Development Corporation. She's a career management professional. She's had experience working with Fortune 500 companies. The next speaker we have is Bernie Reiber, who is a CPA, who also has 25 years business experience, and he's also affiliated with the New York State Small Business Development Center. In fact, he's an expert business advisor that has been twice nominated for New York State Business Advisor of the Year. So I'm just very excited about this program and what we could do to help the residents in the town of Huntington and the small businesses and people moving forward and getting that job. Again, this program will focus on building up the skills and increasing your own awareness and your own level of confidence with getting a job, and those who have a job, increasing your prospects and maximizing your future career path. So let me introduce right now our first and our keynote speaker, Karen McKenna. Karen.
Oh, thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm actually going to use a different mic because I tend to walk around. Is this working? Oh, good. Okay. It's my pleasure to be here this evening. Thank you all for joining us. Before we start, just a couple things. Everybody probably has a cell phone with them. If you could make sure that you've either turned it off or put it on vibrate, that'll keep the interruptions to a minimum. If you have questions during the presentation, if you can jot them down, we've given everybody, or if you haven't picked up the full copy of all the slides that you'll be seeing, the PowerPoint slides are on the table up there. So you can take notes and also jot down if you have any questions. We may be seeing more people joining us. And we'll have a Q&A session after the formal presentations are completed. How many of you feel that you have any control over your own job search, your ability to land a job? Okay, I see one. Okay, I see a few people. That's really what we're going to talk about this evening, is that most people don't realize how much control they can take for their own purposes, for building up their resume, being able to present themselves, doing all the things that you need to be able to do comfortably in order to land a job. So I have a presentation here. Mark mentioned action, and that's really what this whole idea is about, is that in order to be successful in a job search, you need to take action, and you need to take action every single day. And what I'm going to be discussing with you are the different types of actions that will bring you the most results. And the idea is going to be consistency, and it's going to be the mix. Everybody can more or less pick and choose which actions they feel most comfortable doing, and then build up from there. But you do have a lot more control than you realize. One thing, if you're spending a lot of time in front of a computer, which is what most job seekers are doing, because it seems so easy. It's there. You see jobs that look like they're perfect for you. The requirements completely fit your background, and you send in your resume or you apply online, and then you don't hear anything. And that causes you to have less confidence, to feel depressed, and you go into a negative feeling, because you're hoping that by sending your resume, you're going to hear back from someone. And in the past, that actually was a reality, but things have changed dramatically, I would say, over the last 5 or 6 years. And so what you need to be doing is taking action yourself and getting out of the house and meeting other people. Okay, so we'll talk about some of the ways that you can do that. First thing is, if you have a planner, or most people, I use my iPhone as my schedule now. If you have any kind of a calendar, a schedule, whatever it is, book yourself in as many activities as you can. For instance, you're here tonight. So that's an activity that you all put on your calendars, and here you are attending. If you're not familiar with Long Island Business News, it's a weekly paper, and there's a calendar. There's actually 2 calendars. This is the business calendar. You'll notice it's a full page, and it has all different activities that are going on. A lot of them are industry specific, but many of them are not. You'll see small groups of people, I call them grassroots networking groups, that will meet in a Panera Bread, or they'll meet someplace else on a regular basis. Some of them are free, some of them have a charge, some of them you need to belong to an association. But what I would do is recommend that you look at this calendar as well as the nonprofit calendar, which is a separate one in this same publication, and you pick as many activities as you think would be a good match for you in terms of maybe meeting people, learning new things, and just getting yourself out there. The thing that's going to happen once you start this process and you actually book yourself every week is you are going to build momentum. And I would have to say that momentum is the most important aspect of a job searcher's search, is that, like anything else, a skier's coming down the mountain, they're building up momentum. What will happen with your job search is similar. If you were to stay at home and continue to apply online, you're giving control to someone else. You're saying, please choose me. May or may not happen. In this market, it's very, very difficult because companies are being inundated with resumes for every position. So the difference is that you are actually out there taking action, building momentum, and that momentum is going to propel you forward. It will start, just like the skier, you're going to keep going faster as you build more momentum. It's the same process. What did I do with that? Mark touched on this, project professionalism, and that is in every way that you can. So, for instance, it's in terms of the impression that you make in person. So we've become a very casual society, and as a result, many people are dressing very, very casually all the time. If you're in active job search mode, you want to make sure that you move it up a few notches. You don't have to walk around in a suit all the time, but you do want to be in a position, if you're going to these meetings, if you're attending classes, you want to be making the best possible impression as far as being a professional. So that's one aspect. The other is your digital, what I call your digital footprint. If you have a Facebook page, if you have any other social media that you use, you have a digital footprint. And what that means is that if somebody were to Google you, they would see possibly all different types of information. And the problem is that another thing that our society has become is very open. Everybody has, well, not everybody, but a lot of people have Facebook accounts. They put personal pictures on the Facebook accounts. And many people do set their privacy settings so that people cannot go in and look at those pictures if they're not a friend. However, that doesn't always work. The biggest thing for me was recently, I don't know if you saw the news, but Mark Zuckerberg, who is the CEO of Facebook, somebody hacked into his Facebook account, and there were pictures of him and his girlfriend making dinner. And if they can get into his account, they can get into anybody's account. So the problem is with that is you want to make sure that there's nothing out there that someone could dig up. Now, with the younger generation, there's much more openness in terms of putting themselves out there. And that's a risk. The colleges, college admissions officers, Google people. They're looking for any type of an indication that this might not be the caliber of student that we're looking for. Job managers, recruiters, they do the same thing. If it comes down to two different people and they are able to dig up something, you don't want them to be able to disqualify you. So it's important to keep that in mind. This is a big one. Your email address is a perfect opportunity to let people know when you send an email and it goes into their inbox that it's coming from you. A lot of people use very esoteric email addresses that mean something to them. It's a bunch of letters and a bunch of numbers. And I've had clients who have done that. And when they would send me a message and it would appear in my inbox, I would scratch my head and say, oh, who is this? I don't recognize this particular email address because it was ABC123. And a person didn't come to mind right away. So the issue is, if you want people to know that it's you, you need to have an email address that clearly identifies you. So I've used the example jane.doe@gmail.com. so that when that comes into your inbox, when somebody sees it, they know that it's coming from you. There's no guessing there. That will help. The other thing is some people have questionable email addresses. I've seen, people who are parents will have love my boys, or college kids, once again, will have inappropriate email addresses, and they don't realize you put that on your resume, that may be the first thing that gets you off the list in terms of your being selected to come in for an interview. So this is what is all part of your digital footprint. You want to make sure that you're coming across as a professional in all aspects. Finally, the documents, resumes, cover letters, you want to make sure that you proof them and also ask somebody else to proof them. The reason is, I was just at another event recently, and a recruiter was saying a lot of people use spell check only. And the most common mistake people make is they write manger instead of manager. And it doesn't get flagged by spell check because it's a word. So if you have someone else proof your work, their eyes might pick up something like that. Whereas if I proof my own work, I don't see the errors. I may have written the same word twice, and spell check will pick that up. But I've done other things where spell check doesn't pick it up, and it's a mistake. But I read it as I thought I wrote it. So it's really important to just make sure you check and double check. You want to create what is called a brief introduction. Some people call it a pitch. And what that is a very brief introduction that you can use when you're meeting someone at a job fair, or you're meeting someone at a meeting or an event that you might go to. And it's just a way for you to be able to tell them who you are and what you do, and maybe some of your key strengths. So for instance, my introduction would be, my name is Karen McKenna. I'm a career counselor, and I'm passionate about helping people learn how to manage their own careers. And I do that by providing training through workshops such as this. I work with individual clients, and I also write a monthly column for Long Island Business News on all different career themes. So it's some variation that you can remember and that you can say. It takes not even 30 seconds. Question? Mm-hmm.
And then put that tiny URL instead of the big long, 40-character URL. Tiny URL with your basic information, maybe 3 or 4 buzzwords that describe you, manager, operations, whatever it is, that you're looking for that describe you, and your contact information on a card.
Sure.
That's
actually coming up on one of the slides, so thank you. It's a good segue. Yeah, and thank you for sharing that, because I find that at sessions that I do that we all learn from one another, and that's another good part of being out every day and meeting people, because you'll learn a lot. You'll meet a lot of people. You'll make a lot of connections. So thank you. I think it might even be the next slide, so thank you for the segue. You can create your own business cards. My cards, I created them myself. I happen to use an online process through FedEx.com. Vistaprint is another company online. You can create the actual design and the text that will be on the card. What you want to do is you want to make sure that you have your name and your profession. And the thing is if you're between jobs, you don't have a job per se, but you do have a profession. So why not have a business card? And if you think about in older times, people had calling cards that they used. And that was a way to leave someone with information about who you are. So what you want to do with your card is include your email address, your phone number, and how many people have LinkedIn accounts? Okay, good. Your LinkedIn account, you can create your own URL or address for your LinkedIn account so that you can put that on your card as well. Or if you have a website with a tiny URL, you can put wherever you have information that would be a resume or similar to a resume, you can actually point people to that. And it's a lot more, you feel a lot more confident when you're out and about and you can just pick up your card and give it to someone without having to have your resume, because the resume is bulky to say the least. This makes it so much easier. If you have the LinkedIn account, then they can go right to your LinkedIn profile and they can learn everything else about you. There was a new one. I'm constantly hearing about new companies. The new one I heard about just this past week is moo.com, which I've heard a lot of buzz about. So that's another one. I'm not familiar with it myself, but I've heard about it from several different sources that it's another good resource for creating your own business cards. Connecting with others. A lot of people take for granted all the people that you know. Anybody want to guess how many people each person knows approximately? It's anywhere from yes. 150, exactly. 150 to 200 would be the number of people that each of you know fairly well if you add up all your neighbors, your friends, your relatives. And that's the beauty of networking, is that each person that you connect with, you're connected through them with their connections. And that's what LinkedIn does online. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But you want to keep in touch with former colleagues. You want to keep in touch with everyone that you know fairly well and keep them apprised of what it is that you're currently doing, what your goals are. Tell them exactly what it is that you're looking for. I say tell everyone. I don't know if you can see the list going down the left side of the page. Allison, can we try maybe dimming the lights in the front? Is that better? Yeah, I think you could probably see that better. What a lot of people, when they see this slide and they say, why would I tell my doctor or my dentist or the barber? Those people are small business people. They see lots of people every day, and they have them in their office. They get to know their patients or their clients or customers. They also have a vested interest in you having a job, because in this economy, a lot of small businesses have suffered, and they don't want to lose patients and they don't want to lose clients because people can't afford to come as often. You hear the stories that people are not going out to eat as much, they're not getting their hair done as frequently, all different things that people are holding back on. That's hurting these people and their businesses. So the next time you're in their office, you might want to mention, I'm in between jobs. I don't know if I mentioned it to you, but I'm looking for this type of a job. If you happen to hear of anything, here's my card. If you do that consistently with everyone you know, you are planting seeds. And what I call these people are your agents. You are making them your agents. They know who you are. They have a relationship with you. They want to continue that relationship with you. And so they're going to keep their eyes and ears open. And most jobs are actually found through this type of activity. It's a person who knows another person. And they happen to say, somebody comes later on in the day, they're in there at the mechanic, a few days later, whatever, a couple weeks later, and say, somebody just quit on me, just walked out. You happen to know anybody who's, in sales? If you hadn't told them, that's a missed opportunity. So it's planting those seeds before and then having them sprout later. Help others. That's one of my actual favorite recommendations. The reason is, and actually someone that I met in a class I was teaching at Malloy College over the last few weeks actually mailed this to me. And it's going along with the philosophy of helping others. If you see something or read something that you think would be useful for someone else as you're meeting people, as you're out there attending classes, events, send it to them, because you're actually looking out for them and they will be looking out for you. So once again, agents. So what she saw was an article in Fortune magazine that I hadn't seen. And it's actually a very, very good article about networking and how to network the right way. And I loved the article. I thought it was really great. I'm actually going to put some of the links to these articles that I'm getting on my website, which is careervisionary.com. And that is the way that when you help people, and that's actually what this article talks about, is that by you very graciously keeping your eyes and ears open for other people, they will do the same for you. And what happens is that everybody benefits because everyone is helping one another. It's a great, great process, and it builds that momentum. You want to share leads. Maybe you heard about a job that would be good for them. You want to share ideas, maybe your contacts, whatever it is that you can give to them that will help them. Once again, you're planting seeds. And you never know when somebody else will call you up or email you and say, I just heard about a job through the grapevine. It'd be perfect for you. Here's the contact information. Volunteer for a cause. This is my it's actually number 9 on my list of actions, but it's actually my favorite. When you volunteer, there are so many benefits that you receive as a result. And if you have the time when you're between jobs to put yourself into a situation, and it depends upon your availability. But for instance, if you're an animal lover, every animal shelter needs people to walk dogs. The dogs need to be walked every day, several times. So they have groups of volunteers who they've brought in, and those folks will come in and, when they're available, walk the dogs. You get to meet other people who love animals. You enjoy walking the dog because you're an animal lover. It's positive, and it's, once again, momentum. Hospitals. I worked at Winthrop Hospital a few years ago. They had 5,000 employees. They had 500 volunteers. And the hospitals all need, because if you think about how many more people they'd need to hire if they didn't have volunteers helping them out. So that's a different type of a commitment. But there are so many different organizations that could use your help. If you do it strategically, and I have had some clients do that, where they have actually volunteered for a hospital because they wanted to work their way into healthcare, and they didn't have any healthcare experience. By becoming a volunteer in a hospital setting, you become an insider. You start to meet people who work in the hospital. You learn a lot. You're meeting new people. Once again, you're building momentum. And it's a great way to feel good about yourself, to learn new things. For instance, when you're on a job interview, if it's been a while since your last job, the question often comes up, well, what have you been doing since your last position? And let's say it's a year, which is common now. You could say, well, for the last 8 months, I've been volunteering at whatever hospital, whatever charity that you would like to volunteer for. You can also learn skills because different organizations, depending on the size, use different types of software. And you could actually, for instance, if you don't know Excel, you might be able to hone your Excel skills while volunteering. And that goes on your resume. And that strengthens your resume. So there's just, and the best thing is that you're going to be in a better mood. Because when you volunteer, you're putting yourself in a position where you're helping others. And it lifts your mood, and you know that you are making a difference for other people. So I know you have copies of the slides. It's probably hard to see here, but I have resources. One of them is called LongIslandVolunteerCenter.org. That's for local volunteer opportunities. Idealist.org is a wonderful site that has all types of information about nonprofits, about volunteer opportunities and jobs. And it's worldwide. And it's a wonderful website to visit. And then there's volunteermatch.org. And you can also check that as well. Or you can just go to a local charity that you're interested in your neighborhood and ask if they need volunteers to help. And probably no one will say no. Finally, for this portion of the presentation, if you haven't thought about starting your own business or possibly become a consultant or a contractor, this might be a good time to do that. Because what we're seeing is there's a real change in our economy. And I was having a conversation a little earlier about this, that more and more jobs are becoming consulting jobs. And the full-time model of job, which we've seen for the last, the last 50 years, is going away. It's not going to go away overnight, but it's starting. And so becoming a consultant would be a good idea for people in certain types of roles. For instance, myself. It's very hard to find a full-time position as a career counselor other than in a college. And therefore, being an independent career counselor allows me to do all different types of work. So writing, doing workshops, working with individuals, I can do all of that. Now, what helped me actually make the leap from having been a corporate employee for most of my career was the Small Business Development Center and my advisor, Bernie. I have to say that I have been working with Bernie for about a year and a half now. And he is actually, I know I'm probably embarrassing you, but anyway, he has been so instrumental in helping me build my business. For instance, on one of our first meetings, I mentioned that I thought Long Island Business News needed a career column in this economy. So he said, well, why don't you contact them and pitch a column? So I said, yeah, you think I could just call up the publisher and say I want to write a column? And he said, yeah, what have you got to lose? So it got me thinking, and I said, well, what if I write a sample column and send it to them and say, I think you could use this type of information for your readers? And I did it. And they liked it. And they said, you can start writing a column, a monthly column. That was September of 2010. And I always thank Bernie for that. He's actually been there and helped me strategize, bounce ideas, and also think up creative ways that I can grow the business. So with that, I think Mark is going to do the introduction.
Yes. I want to thank Karen, and she's going to be coming back in a few minutes. And I just want to introduce Bernie Reba, who's going to talk about business resources. And I just want everyone to know that Bernie's been coming to the town of Huntington every week now on a Friday and helping people with their business plans. And he's been part of the town and going forward. And he's, again, associated with the Stony Brook, New York State Small Business Development Center. And he's doing such a great job. I just want to thank him. And without further ado, here's Bernie.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. As Karen had mentioned, when you're looking for a position, it is a good time to also consider, whether it might be a good idea to go into your own business. I mean, you've got some time to, sort of think about things, sleep on it, consider just how much money you might like to invest in starting up a business. So, you can kind of do two things at the same time. And if you're thinking about starting up a business, then what better place to receive counseling and free confidential counseling than at the Stony Brook Small Business Development Center. Now, we're part of a state system, and we have 23 centers throughout the state, about 160 advisors. We started our services back in 1984, and since then we've counseled, I just got the updated numbers now, about 350,000 businesses in New York State. We've helped to arrange for $4.6 billion in financing, and directly or indirectly, we help to put people in jobs or create their own jobs to the tune of 150,000 jobs in New York State since 1984. For the Office of Stony Brook, we've been around since 1985. We were one of the initial offices. We've counseled over 21,000 businesses. We've helped to arrange for $360 million of financing, and we've helped to save or create 8,400 jobs. So, as I mentioned, our services are free. They're confidential. Once you contact us and you're assigned an advisor, you can come back to us as frequently as you'd like. We've had some people that are continuing to receive counseling from us throughout the years. I've seen people several years ago, then they were satisfied with the growth of their business, and then recently I see them again. So it's like the return of an old friend. Friends have new problems, and so someone like myself, who Mark has mentioned, I'm a certified public accountant. I started out my career in Manhattan with a large public accounting firm. I went from there to a Fortune 100 company. One of my responsibilities there for about 3 years, knowing nothing about it, was personnel. I hired about 25 people, conducted maybe a couple of hundred interviews in order to do that, and I've been, fortunate to say that, I've had a very varied and interesting career. I've traveled internationally. All of these business experiences I bring to the clients that I see through the Stony Brook Small Business Development Center. So what can we do for you folks? Well, whether you're starting a business or whether you have your own business, and I've seen people that have been in business through generations as long as 75 years come to our office. If you're starting up a business, the only requirement that we have is that you have a pretty good idea of what kind of business you'd like to get into. It's difficult to brainstorm with people to help them determine what they're best suited for. So that's something that we'd ask you to bring to the initial session, that you have some idea of what you'd like to do. Beyond that, the two most important criteria that I like to communicate to people is you've got a real opportunity here. Okay, you can do something that you really enjoy doing. Okay, so that's an important consideration. The second consideration is I want you to enjoy something that you've been looking forward to doing, and also make money at it. Okay, there are some people occasionally that I see that would enjoy doing something, but it's real tough to make money at. So, you've got to remember that, of course, you've got to make a living, and so we go through that aspect of it in order to help you to, have the best chance of getting off on the right foot, and then growing your business so that you can, make a reasonable living. So what kind of services do we provide? Well, one is, like Mark had mentioned, business plan development. And a business plan is a guide. It's a roadmap in order to help you determine what the important characteristics, information that you should be aware of before you start out in business. You can imagine that somebody who maybe was an aircraft mechanic at JFK Airport, losing his job and then deciding that he wants to be a florist after 25 years as an aircraft mechanic. So if he doesn't investigate this, if he doesn't go through the business plan process, if he just starts to rent a place and buy flowers and have no idea of what's important in order to run this particular business, his chances of success are not going to be as great as if he develops a plan of attack. If he reaches out to a business advisor like myself, who has 30 to 35 years of business experience, who I can help him to identify the major areas that he should focus on, so that when he starts out on his business, the kind of basic mistakes will already be addressed. He'll be aware of what to avoid, things to address, so it will enhance his chances of success. We can't guarantee success, but we can improve the chances of success. And as I've said, over the years, we've counseled about 21,000 businesses. Every year, we counsel about 1,000 businesses. Now, just because we're on the university doesn't mean that, we limit ourselves to university types or researchers, although I do provide services to professors that would like to go into business or have a side business or are doing research at the university. We have 5 incubators at the university, about 50 different businesses, and we provide services to those businesses as well. In my career at Stony Brook, and I've been there several years, I've provided services to such organizations as Brookhaven National Labs. Mark has said that I've been here for several months, holding out my services in the Business Research Center here on the 3rd floor. I had an office in Great River, the old Grumman Research Facility. I've seen people that have been as diverse as having their credit completely shot, no money in the bank, basically bankrupt, come to me for ideas, as opposed to somebody who was a former vice president in an investment bank in New York City and had a team of programmers working for him in India in order to develop a software as a service business, and everything in between. So for most of these people, a business plan is appropriate in order to learn what you're getting into and how best to address it. Beyond that, we help you to identify sources of financing. For most businesses, you'll need some sort of investment. And one of the things that I cover in my initial consultation is just what is possible when it comes to investment. I asked about your savings, how much equity you have in your home, what's your credit score, how much is in your retirement account, and then, what are you looking to do? If somebody comes to me and says, well, I'm looking to open up a restaurant, it's always been my dream, and I want to own the building, and, I see there's something for sale for $800,000, and I find out that you have $25,000 in the bank, your credit is shot, the person's wife is sitting next to him shaking her head no. I think the answer would be obvious, just how we would proceed. So we don't provide for financing, but we are aware of the different sources of financing and the possibilities, and I'll discuss those in a few minutes. We discuss marketing opportunities. You can do everything correct in starting up a business. The legal structure, you can rent an office, you can buy the furniture, you can get the computer, you can get the business cards and everything, but marketing is getting in front of your target market, okay? You've got to decide what your target market is, and then once you get in front of that target, you have to know how to sell. Okay, so you can do everything else right, but if you can't get in front of your target market, if you can't sell, then you won't have revenues. And if you don't have revenues, then bottom line, you don't have a business. We can do financial planning, growth strategies, cost expense analysis, and also focus on legal structures. Other things we can focus on, projections, some aspects of taxation, credit issues, e-commerce, the importance of that, and licensing and government regulations. Everybody that comes to a counseling session with me comes away with free materials. I've brought some with me this evening. They're back on the table in the back. And we also have free materials in the office here on the third floor. So I'd just like to dwell for a minute on the importance of a business plan. There are two real reasons for a business plan, and I've talked about one, and that is the educational aspect. Okay, you want to learn as much about the business, the kind of industry that you're going into, as much as possible, so that you can be as much of an expert as possible, so you get off to the right start. The second reason is for financing. That is that if you need, unfortunately, even in times of good credit, if you're looking for financing from traditional sources, and I mean by that a bank, normally you need approaching 2 years of experience in business. That might not be necessarily currently in business. For example, I have a young lady now. It looks like she's going to get about a $200,000 loan. She's been working in a hospital for the last 4 years. But prior to that, on separate occasions, she owned 3 delis. And she ran those delis, very profitably, and demonstrated that she could manage a business and people. And because of that, and because of the other resources that she's bringing to this opportunity, it's been judged that she is probably going to get a loan to start up this business, totaling about $200,000. So, 2 basic reasons for a business plan. Number one, the learning about the business, and then number 2, helping to arrange for financing. Because the reasons businesses fail revolve around business plan, knowledge, and financing. Okay, if you don't know what you're doing, then your chances of failing are enhanced. If you run out of money, that's another reason that businesses fail. And the third reason is if you're in this on your own, you are the chief bottle washer. You're responsible for everything. And you're going to learn about yourself, as I learned about myself when I was subject to a restructuring in my firm. And all of a sudden, after 16 years with a terrific company, I found that I no longer was associated with that firm. And I learned quite a bit about myself and my ability to move forward and look for a job, and the resources and the kind of advice that Karen provides is really invaluable in that kind of exercise, and the support. So the ability to sell is critical. Okay, if you can't sell, again, then if you can, you should draw somebody into the process that can sell, so that you focus on the things that you do best. So what are the reasons that businesses succeed? Okay, first you have to work hard, work smart. You have to be focused. Second, you have to have a sustainable competitive advantage. And third, establish relationships that will benefit you and the company. And that also is alluding to the networking exercise as well. So it works not only in the job search, but it works in the development of business. When I attend association meetings, networking meetings, I would say that probably it seems like a quarter of the people there are either CPAs, accountants, or attorneys. They're wonderful networkers. They're always looking to establish relationships. And when I was in my Fortune 100 firm, I personally was very isolated. I mean, I knew a lot of people in my firm, but I really didn't know many people outside the firm. As I stand here this evening, I probably know hundreds and hundreds of people. I know people that I've even forgot. So that, strange as it may sound, but if I enter into a place, people notice me that I've met a couple of years ago. But in my line of business, since I meet so many people, you know, the names and the faces sometimes blend together after a couple of years. So anyway, the value of that is incalculable, okay? Because as Karen has said, you know, the more people you know and the right people you know, the better chances you have of something being identified for you. And on a personal basis, I will say that over my career that I have helped 4 people actually get jobs. Okay, this is not something that happens on a monthly basis. It just happened that I was at the right place at the right time. Somebody came to my attention, and I was aware of this particular situation. They were all good jobs. So I'm sure that I'm not, that's more the rule rather than the exception. So you see the reason for knowing so many people in order to enhance your chances. More about us as a small business development center. We have workshops at the campus. We usually put on about 30 workshops a year. They can be on such topics as marketing, cash management, and insurance. We have special programs focusing on technology and veterans and international business. We work closely with towns, the counties, the state, congressional representatives, the Small Business Administration, and the Service Corps of Retired Executives. Of course, we have many, many relationships with banks, with professional associations such as the Long Island Software and Technology Network, the acronym is LISTNet, with the Hauppauge Industrial Association, which happens to be the second largest industrial association east of the Mississippi River. And we offer, besides our services, we are a university that on a normal day has about 30,000 people on campus. We offer other services through our engineering department, through our incubator system, through our biotech and computer science departments. So I hope you agree that we can provide a great deal to people that are looking to start or that have their own business and are looking for some sort of brainstorming or counseling on a particular problem. Now, I also wanted to just touch briefly on a couple of the important things that I go over in a counseling session. One is financing, and 2 is the importance of a credit score. Financing can be sourced from basically several different sources. Number one, if you're starting out on a business, as I said, extremely difficult and not impossible to get traditional financing from a commercial bank. So there would be, your first source would be family and friends. Secondly, if you have something of a technology-based opportunity, there may be an opportunity to get angel financing. And here on Long Island, we have the Long Island Angel Network, we have the Long Island Capital Association. Both organizations attract angels, and that is high net worth investors, to listen to presentations from people that have something that's probably patented that is either in the technology area, such as information technology or biotechnology or something like that. Another area of financing besides the commercial banks might be venture capital firms. This is probably financing that's more related to an organization that's been around for like 3 to 4 years. They already have sales. They probably received angel financing, and now they're looking to supplement that angel financing by more substantial financing in order to take the business to the next level. I will mention that from a commercial bank perspective, oftentimes when you're looking for financing as a small business, the commercial banks will reach out to the Small Business Administration in order to guarantee the loan that they're going to be giving to the small business owner. So what does that mean? It means that the bank will say, yes, we will make the loan if the SBA guarantees the repayment of that loan to 75 or 85%. If the SBA steps into the process, then they will want collateral. And 100% of the time, that collateral will be your home. Now, when I explain that, especially to a couple, it's usually the wife that puts the kibosh on that. You know, I'm not putting up my home as collateral for some idea that he has. So that's where that ends up. But I want you to be aware that the SBA does not lend money, but it simply guarantees loans, okay? And for the price of guaranteeing that loan, they basically charge you, the borrower, 4% of the loan. And when there are defaults on the loan, they draw from the 4% that they've collected from all of these loans in order to repay the bank their 75 to 80%. So what will the lender review? Well, first of all, it's important to have a good credit score. Credit scores on the FICO basis, that's the Fair Isaac Company standard, can range up to a score of 850. Credit scores are extremely important, and it's important for you to know your score. I had a young lady once in front of me who she had wanted to borrow about $25,000, and I said for a particular piece of equipment that she was looking to start up, it happened to be a sophisticated sewing machine kind of thing, you know, for jackets and things of that nature. So I said, well, what's your credit score? She says, I have a bad credit score. It's 475. I said, which happened to be the worst credit score that I've ever heard in my career. But she says, not to worry. She says, my brother's got a good credit score. And I says, what's his score? She said, well, it's 525. So relatively speaking, it was good, but it still was bad. So obviously she didn't have, the ability to borrow what she wanted to borrow. So anyway, there's 5 C's of credit analysis. The first is the capacity to repay. The banker's going to be looking at you and your business and the cash flow to see if the cash flow is going to support the repayment of this particular loan. Secondly, capital. How much are you going to invest in this? Sometimes I hear that a person will want a $100,000 loan but doesn't want to invest anything in it. They want the bank to take the entire risk. The possibility of the bank doing that certainly is lower than if you participate maybe a third. You put up $30,000 and the bank is going to foot $70,000. So the bank welcomes you to participate in the investment process. Third, banks, the SBA, love collateral. And they, homes are traditional collateralized property that's reflected in these agreements. Fourth, what are you going to use the loan for? If it's the traditional, we need it for equipment, that is an easier sell. You can't ask for a loan in order to, support your salary requirements. For instance, one time we had in our office someone who came in and he was looking for a $250,000 loan. And we asked him, well, what are the purposes of the loan? Well, $100,000 was going to be for equipment and marketing initiatives, and the other $150,000 was for his salary for the first year. Well, I mean, how can you justify that? Well, he said, I need to make a living, and that's the way I'm going to do it. Well, obviously, he couldn't get a loan for his salary. So, and then the fifth thing is you as a business person, how do you come across? How do you present yourself? If you have a business plan, is it well written? And then I wanted to just tell you a little bit about a credit score and what you can do about avoiding a lower credit score. Credit scores are like stock market indices. Okay, they go up real slow, but they go down real fast. Okay, I've heard that if you make one late payment, your credit score can go down by 100 points. Okay, the significance of that is that if you're borrowing money for like a car loan or a mortgage, you're going to be paying more for it. So an oversight like that is going to cost you dearly, and so that's why it's so important to keep track of what your credit score is. So what are the things that you can do? Well, you don't want to pay your bills late, okay? You want to pay, if you can, more than your minimum payments. You don't want to keep your debt levels too high. You don't want to own too many credit cards. However, over the years, if you're like me, you'll own more and more credit cards because I respond to solicitations. Some of these solicitations are very attractive. And I've gotten as much as $750 of free merchandise just by responding to a solicitation. That's because I have a credit score of 800, and I'm attractive to these credit card companies. So I have too many credit cards. I probably have 15 credit cards. You're only supposed to have 5 or 6, okay? But all of these credit cards that I don't use have great history on it. So if I shut down 10 of these credit cards, guess what? The history's gone. And this history that's part of the FICO score calculation, all of a sudden I wouldn't have an 800 score anymore. I'd have like 700. So by taking the advice of people that recommend that you should only have 5 or 6 cards, I would be hurting myself. I'd be paying more in terms of an interest percentage. So that's why I maintain the cards that I have. Occasionally, a credit card company will reach out to me and say, hey, listen, you haven't been using your card, and we're going to shut down your card. And then I just let it go away. Other than that, I just keep these cards. And the other thing you can do is periodically check your credit report. I check the credit reports about once a year. Now, there are 3 services. There's Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. And, you're supposed to get a free credit report each year from each one of these. And also, you can link, of course, the credit score to the credit report. So you can go on the Internet, and there's various services, and I've done it on several occasions. So that's what I'd like to say about the initial kind of questions that I run by in a counseling session. We are, I've been around Long Island now for about 30 years. We've counseled, again, 21,000 clients. We've take clients from all walks of life. People that, have a lot of money in the bank and investments, to start up a business, and people that don't know where to turn next, and everybody in between. I welcome anybody from this audience that would like to use my services here through the Huntington Business Resource Center. You can speak to Allison over here. We have SBA forms that you would fill out with contact information. Then Allison would get in touch with you in order to set up an appointment. I'm here on Fridays. If you can't come to an appointment here on Fridays here at Huntington, I'm at the Stony Brook office for the other 4 days, and I'd be glad to see you there as well. I'd be glad to answer any questions after Karen wraps up her presentation.
Thank you. Actually, this slide was supposed to come before. This was the introductory slide for Bernie. To pick up where we left off, has anyone ever heard of, is this working? Yes. Has anyone ever heard of an informational interview? Okay. What it is it's a very, very effective technique to use when you are actively looking for work. And what you do is you set up an appointment to meet with someone either that you know or someone you know knows. And what you are going to do during that meeting is you're going to ask them very specific questions about how they got into the field that they're in, or any other information about their background. And really, most people love to help, and they also love to talk about themselves. So there's a process of actually approaching someone. I've done informational interviews myself, and they've actually been very helpful to me in my career. So typically what you would do is, let's say you know someone who has a friend who works in a company that you're very interested in working for. What you would do is either through the contact, or the contact would say, oh, go ahead and call Joe because just tell him I sent you. Either they'll facilitate it, or they will say, you know, go ahead and call the person. When you make the appointment, you want to tell them that I really, first of all, Joe recommended you very highly as an expert, and I'm very interested in working in the field you're in. I'll only take 15 minutes of your time, and I'll meet with you early morning before you start your day, or I'll meet with you after hours. Whatever works best for you, I'll make myself available. And I'd like to ask you some questions. Now, what will happen sometimes when you're on this phone call is the person will push back. And they'll say, well, we don't have any openings right now. And the thing to say at that point is, I'm not looking to get a job from you. I'm looking to get information from you that will help me make the contacts I need to move forward in my search. And I want to pick your brain, basically, because you're an expert on this. So most people, because they either know you directly or they know someone that you know, will say yes, set up the appointment. What you then need to do is draw up some questions that you want to ask the person. So you have a list of questions. How did you get into this field? What kind of training did you have? Or what kind of a degree did you need? How did you segue into this field or into this company? You can ask many, many different questions. Just be prepared. Bring the questions with you. Also bring a copy of your resume. And what you're going to do with the resume is at a certain point when you're speaking with this individual, you're going to say, would you be willing to take a look at my resume and give me any constructive criticism, any feedback that you think would help me? At that point, you slide the resume towards them. They have the resume. In doing this process, if you conduct yourself in a very professional way and you make an impression on the person, you've accomplished quite a bit in a 15 or 20-minute period of time, which usually ends up being longer. One of the informational interviews I had was supposed to be 15 minutes, and it turned out to be an hour and a half. Doesn't happen all the time, but if you have a lot of things that you're both interested in, you could click at that point. What's going to happen is they're going to have your resume. They're going to know about you. They've had a chance to meet you face to face. You've made an impression on them. So if they do happen to hear of an opening, it couldn't hurt you for them to say, you know what? Email you or call you and say, this job just opened up. I wanted to let you know about it. I put in a good word for you. Okay, so it's a way for you to once again build more agents that are going to be out there looking on your behalf, or keeping their eyes open at least, for opportunities that would be good for you. They have your resume, which is great. Maybe they will give you some feedback, which might be very, very helpful. So what you want to do once you complete that informational interview is be sure that you send a thank you. I prefer a handwritten note. which is kind of like going back to the Civil War days at this point, but it makes an impression. When someone takes the time to write a note, you just write a brief card. Thank you so much for the information you shared with me. It's been very helpful, and I really appreciate your time. And if there's anything I can do for you, please don't hesitate to ask. And that hopefully becomes a relationship, a professional relationship that you will maintain over the years. And I would have to say that when talking about relationship building and connecting with people or networking, I would say the one biggest mistake people make is that they only reach out when they need something. How many people know people like that? You see them coming and you're like, they only come and they come at you fiercely. I need your help. You know, I need this, I need that. The best way to network is to help other people and to do it consistently, because you build a very strong relationship with a large group of people. So, for instance, the article that this woman sent to me, that's the kind of thing that you could do. You happen to see something online, you quickly email a link to something you saw online to someone you know would benefit from reading that. It's a great way for people to, I call it cross-pollination. If you know a group of people, like for instance, if you meet anybody here tonight that is also looking for work and you get to know that person, you exchange email addresses or whatever, they tell you what they're looking for and vice versa, and you keep your eyes out for each other, you've just created one of these small connections. And you need to keep those connections going. And that's actually what this article is about. So it's a very, very effective method that I definitely recommend that if you haven't tried it, that you do build it into your job search strategy. Keep learning and building your skills. This is something that when you're in between jobs, you probably have the time to be able to devote to some type of training. I always recommend public libraries. Every single library has so many different choices of programs, from computer training. If you don't know Word, if you don't know Excel, you don't know PowerPoint, those are the three big applications that most corporations want people to know. If you don't have those skills, it would be an excellent time to take classes when you're in between jobs. It's very useful. Once again, if you get asked the question, what have you been doing since your last job? You can say, well, I've been volunteering here, and I've also been taking classes. I've taken Excel, PowerPoint, and Word up to the intermediate level. It's impressive. People notice it. They see that you're not sitting around and not doing anything. You're going out and you're educating yourself. You're keeping yourself current on latest technologies. Very, very important. What could you take? Well, you could take computer classes. Those are probably the most useful. If you do need to beef up those skills, I highly recommend that. But you could also just take, for instance, you always wanted to learn Italian. You can take an Italian course. Sometimes certain libraries will have that. Most libraries on Long Island, you don't have to be a patron of that library to be able to go to programs. Depends each library. I do a lot of workshops at libraries, and very often people come from the surrounding areas, and there's no charge. And it's a great way for you, once again, to meet more people, learn something new, and it gets you out there and engaged. Take a writing class. Let's say you always wanted to do creative writing, or you wanted a lot of people are becoming authors now because it's very easy to publish. You can self-publish. So if you've always wanted to write a novel, you could probably find classes at some of the libraries or even some of the schools' continuing education programs on writing. Great thing. It's something that's going to give you new skills. It's going to get you out meeting new people who have similar interests. Once again, it's a win-win situation. You might also want to take public speaking. The Dale Carnegie course happens to be a fairly expensive program. I've done that course. It's very, very helpful, but there's an equal, which Toastmasters is a low-cost organization, And there are Toastmaster clubs, I guess you would call them, on Long Island that hold the meetings. I believe it's a continuation of maybe 8 weeks. And each person who's in that group will get up and do presentations. And you support one another and you help each other build those skills. Excellent skills to have, because if you can speak in front of a group comfortably, you will be presenting yourself better and better when you're one-on-one, or if you happen to be interviewed by a group of people, which is becoming very common. You go on an interview, you might actually, depending on the type of work or job it is, you might actually be interviewed by 5 people at the same time. So these would be skills that would make you feel more comfortable and more capable of doing a good job. Keep up with technology. We mentioned the applications. There are quite a number of different organizations. One of them here locally is called SeniorNet. Has anybody ever heard of SeniorNet? Okay. SeniorNet is a nonprofit. It is supported, the one in Huntington is supported by the Family Service League, a nonprofit organization. It's a wonderful organization that provides computer technical training classes to anyone 50 or older. There is a cost, but it's very low cost considering the quality of and the caliber of courses that you get. The way I learned about SeniorNet was through a former client of mine. I did a lot of work with J.P. Morgan Chase Career Services, and I worked with a lot of IT people. I had an IT client, a woman who had taken an early retirement package, but she really didn't want to stop working. So I kept telling her, you really should look into volunteering. Why don't you look into volunteering? And she'd say, well, I don't know. And it took her a while, but about 6 months after we were no longer formally working as a counselor and client, she emailed me. And she said, I finally took your advice. I volunteered at this organization called SeniorNet, and I love it. So what she has done is she has become an integral part of that organization, and she is an expert on Facebook. And what she did was she wrote courses for them, because the people that teach the courses at SeniorNet are all doing it on a volunteer basis. And they represent a wide variety of careers and backgrounds. So she went in and said, not only am I going to teach the courses, I'm going to create new courses. And she absolutely loves it. She started a business where she's doing one-on-one, not counseling, but helping people learn how to set up and use their computer in their home, as well as continuing to do the programs at SeniorNet. So I've recommended it. I've had people in some of the workshops that I do who have never had an opportunity to use the computer. And they maybe they're 60 years old. A lot of people are working through their 60s up to 70. Everybody's got a different situation. If you don't have those skills, you absolutely must get those skills. And SeniorNet is one of the best ways to do it if you're 50 or older. The libraries and also the Department of Labor. Are you familiar with the one-stop centers? They're run by the government. In Suffolk County, we have the Hauppauge location, which is run by the county, and then there is a location in Patchogue, which is run by New York State. They offer computers, copiers, faxes, internet connections, classes, counseling. There's a whole variety of programs that are available at those centers. And I'm going to give you the information. It's in the booklets on how you find out all the information on the different locations. Keep up with your industry or your profession. If you're no longer associated with an organization, you might tend to not be keeping up with what's going on in that industry. It's natural. You're no longer in the day-to-day operations of whatever it was, marketing you were doing, or were you involved in some type of technology, whatever it is. So what I recommend is that you keep up with as much information as you possibly can take. And there's lots of different ways. Long Island Business News is a publication that unfortunately a lot of people have never heard of. It's available online. A lot of the content is available online at libn.com, which is also in your booklets. You will read things in Long Island Business News that you will not read anywhere else. You'll learn about what companies are doing on Long Island, what projects are happening, and it will keep you up to date and will sometimes provide you that little nugget of information that you need in order to be able to move in a certain direction or meet a different type of person that you're looking to meet, finding out about things. I recommend Fast Company if you're interested in the latest technology and what businesses are doing. They have a website that's very good. I have a subscription. And you can go to fastcompany.com and take a look at it. I have to admit, when I read some of the stories, I have no idea what they're talking about because it is so leading edge, but it keeps me up to date on what's going on in companies and their use of technologies. Yes? I'm sorry? Fast. F-A-S-T, company.com. And it's in the handouts as well. And most of the things that I'm mentioning are also on my website, these resources. I read Business Week, which also has, this is great because it has little snippets of information. They also have a website you can go to. And you can find out all different types of information. I learn a lot about not just business, but politics, what's going on in the world. It's a short read. They have these little blurbs, and it keeps me up to date with what's going on around me. You really want to know as much as possible about what's going on because when you're meeting people, it's going to help you make those connections, those vital connections that you need to make. You can also set up alerts, news alerts in Google. So as much as you can, as much as possible, it's good for you to set up streams of information that will come to you, that you don't actually have to go out and find and remember to go and read. So for instance, I have 2 Google searches that I've set up. One of them, I put the keywords career counselor. The other is job market in quotes. You go in through Google, it's under options. You can go in and create as many alerts as you want. You pick the frequency and the number of alerts that you want to be given. And what Google does is it collects all of the articles that are online that meet that criteria, that happen to be, based on their algorithms, the most popular on that topic. So when I first did it, I said, all right, give me 20 articles on each of those topics every day. Very quickly said, no, once a week, please. And what I do is on Friday, I get my lists, and I just browse through them very, very quickly. I pick which ones look like they're going to be something that will help me. I read the article, I save it or I put a link to it, and I'm just getting that information, and I don't have to actually remember to go out and ask for it. It comes to me. So you can use the technology to do that. How many people have used Twitter? Okay, good. I have to admit myself, I was very hesitant to use Twitter, and I thought, well, what am I going to use it for? I know people are using it for the silliest things. If you're searching for work, you can set up a Twitter account, and you can follow companies that you're interested in. You will receive information on any of those companies. Whenever they tweet, you will receive those tweets. So once again, you don't have to go out there and request the information. It's coming automatically to you. Again, I had set up the tweets so that I would actually get them right away in my email. Very quickly said, no, I can't do this. So I go into Twitter occasionally, and I look at all the different information that has come in. You'd be very surprised. One of the people I follow is the Dalai Lama. He has a Twitter account. I thought, if he's got a Twitter account, Why can't I? So it's just one more tool that you can use to keep yourself engaged and on top of what's going on in the companies and the businesses that you're interested in. You want to keep up with local news. I mentioned Long Island Business News. Anybody familiar with Patch.com? Okay, good. It's a relatively new news that is hyper-local. So Huntington has a patch, and many towns or villages on Long Island have a Patch.com. You can go into Patch.com and then just search by zip code. And the client that I mentioned before, who does the training at SeniorNet, she started writing patch columns, and they're often featured in the Huntington patch. And sometimes the articles are shared from one municipality to another. So it's something, once again, you're going to keep up with. You're going to be reading about is the local news at the very, very local level. It'll keep you up to date on what's going on in your town. Learn to use social media strategically. LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook are the three big ones. Actually, in the process of creating a workshop specifically on this topic, one of the libraries that I work with has requested it. So, for instance, I picked up a book at one of the bookstores, and it's one of the Dummies books. It's using social media for your job search for dummies. And it happens to be a very good resource. So there's tons of information out there, but you really do want to know how to get the most out of all the social media, particularly LinkedIn. LinkedIn is set apart from the other social media in that it is really meant to be an online community. And people are using it for all types of connections. What's happening now is recruiters are actively looking for candidates for jobs using LinkedIn. So if you don't have a profile and it's not set up strategically, you may be missing opportunities. So you definitely want to have a profile, and you want to populate that profile with information on your skills, your experience. They keep adding new fields, like, for instance, volunteering. They added volunteering, so you can put in all the different volunteer work that you've done. It's constantly changing, constantly growing, and if you don't have a LinkedIn profile yet, I would strongly recommend that you create one and that you continually add to it. What some people use it for is to link up with other people that they worked with in the past. I've had people who I haven't seen in 25 years. All of a sudden, they want to connect with me, and it's like going back in time. It's really, really a great way, and it's very much the technology of today, which you need to know, because although we still have resumes, my belief is that we are moving more and more towards an online resume. We'll still have paper resumes for a while, but we're going to see things transition, and LinkedIn is the closest thing to an online resume at this point. You also mentioned the tiny URL as well. You can also, and if you have a website, you could also post your resume on your website if you wanted to. But LinkedIn is a wonderful tool. Automate your job searches. Indeed.com is the only job search engine that I use. It's an aggregator. So if you set up searches in Indeed.com, it will go out and search for whatever information you've highlighted that you want, and it will go to all the other job boards, and it will bring back, and it'll also go into individual companies' websites and pull out jobs on their websites. So if you put in something, you may get 100 jobs coming back within the radius that you put, within the specific search words that you put. And that will, once again, you can set up Indeed alerts so that you will get a list every day or every week, whatever frequency you choose, like Google, and you won't have to actually initiate online searches. So it saves you time so that you can spend more time out attending classes, going to meetings, meeting people. And, you know, what you want to do is have your hand in everything. You want to have jobs that you see online. You might want to apply for them, but you also need to be out there meeting people every day. So Indeed gives you that freedom. Take advantage of every resource. The libraries are great. Every library has all different types of information that you can have them help you with reference. For instance, most libraries have Long Island Business News every week, and they also would have this book. Anyone who has a subscription to Long Island Business News would get the Book of Lists. This lists all the different companies on Long Island, and it includes their website, their chief executives, all their contact information, emails. So if you want to do an actual search and you want to send out to a number of different companies in a particular industry, you could use this information. I'm not sure, but the libraries probably also have it in a digital form because it's available both digitally as well as the printed book. Comes in very, very handy when you want to actually target specific organizations. College Alumni Association. If you attended a college, you had a career center, and there's usually an alumni association as well. And those two organizations within most colleges or universities work together. So for instance, if people have graduated and they've gone off and they're working somewhere and they have stayed active in the alumni association, they have an option to tell the school, I would like to hook up with people who are graduating or have graduated. I'd be willing to network with them. And so that's another opportunity that you might not have thought of, but you paid for in your tuition. And so the Alumni Association may be one way for you to be able to hook up with people who are working in a company that you're interested in. And a lot of people have that feeling of camaraderie. We have the same alma mater. They want to talk to you. It's this connection that you have that you could certainly take advantage of, and you should. I know it's probably hard to read it on here, but you do have all the information in the packets, and this information is also on my website. Servicelocator.org is used to find the one-stop centers, although here on Long Island, you know, as I mentioned, we have the two in Suffolk County. Payscale.com is an excellent resource for you to know what you're worth in the marketplace. You can go into Payscale, you can request a free report. It will ask you a lot of questions. What degree do you have? What school did you go to? What are your skills? What is your experience? Where do you live? All of that information gets entered in, and they will give you a report that shows you the minimum, the midpoint, and the max for your salary as well as total compensation. What this information is good for is when you're interviewing and you need to negotiate the salary. You will know exactly how much you're worth. So if at the point, let's say you've gone on several interviews and you're at the point where they're making you an offer, very often the recruiter or the hiring manager will want you to give a number first. Payscale will help you in that don't ever give one number. Give a range, and Payscale will give you the range. And you can say, if they say how much you're looking for, you can say, well, based on my research, I know that somebody with my background, as far as experience and education, would be earning between $50,000 and $60,000 on Long Island. So you could say that with confidence and know that that is because they have tons and tons of information that they are keeping track of. So they always have the latest information. There are other sites as well. I just happen to like Payscale. There's another one called salary.com. MyNextMove.org is it's U.S. Department of Labor. It's a great site to use if you're thinking of changing careers. It's a good point where you can go in and it will actually work with you on what are your interests, what are you good at, and here are some careers that you might want to consider. And it links to ONET Online, which is another government site. And ONET Online is what used to be called the Occupational Handbook. It was a book this fat at the library, and it has every single job that has been documented. It's given a number, and there's a formal job description. All of that is online. You can look that up, and you can get a very clear idea of what you would be doing in a particular job, what kind of education you need, what are the day-to-day activities. It also links to the New York State Department of Labor, and there you can actually view videos of a day in the life of a software engineer or a marketing specialist. So I definitely recommend that you check out those sites because it's very, very helpful. It's free for the asking. It's good information. And the more information you have, the more knowledgeable you are, the more powerful you will be in your search. Keep losing this. And that pretty much covers all of the resources, all of the information. One thing I was thinking of when this was planned is that this is actually a leap year. And so tomorrow is an extra day for all of us. So I think we should all make the best of it. I've given you lots of resources, lots of information. So has Bernie. And at this point, if anybody has questions that you would want to direct to either of us. Yes. It's a great question. Comes up all the time. And I would have to tell you, a lot of people think that they have to keep their resume to one page. Not true. Depends on how long you've been working. So if you've been working for 5, 10, like say somewhere between 5 and 10 years or longer, you should have a 2-page resume. If you're a new grad and you've maybe done some internships, and maybe had one job, maybe you graduated within the last year, you would have 1 page. So that's pretty much the guidelines. I definitely recommend not going beyond 2 pages. And the way you do that is you don't go back more than 15 years. The average is 10 to 15 years back, which can be difficult if you've worked for one company for 30 years. Because what you could do is maybe you had several jobs, you worked your way up at the company. You put very little information about the earlier jobs because the most relevant information on your resume is the most recent work that you've done. So does that answer the question? Okay, good. Anybody else? No?
I want to thank Karen and Bernie for their valuable information and please. Our Huntington Resource and Recovery Center is on the 3rd floor, and it's open during regular business hours to serve your needs. So please come, take advantage of our free resources and our free business advice, courtesy of New York State through the Small Business Center program. Thank you very much.